So, welcome all for the first Flutter session. Today, what we'll be going through is understanding the Flutter folder structure itself. So, it's important to know what are the folders that are present, what each one represents. Also, what are the files that you will be changing and what are the files that you will not be changing. And when you look at a Flutter project, what is the starting point? As in, when I look at a open source project, how do I start with looking for Flutter? Like, as in, when I open a Flutter project, where do I start even with? And I'll also be introducing about widgets. In fact, Flutter is all about widgets, and mastering widgets is like mastering Flutter. And then we'll also see, if we have time, we'll talk about layouts in Flutter, because that is what we use when you take an application, it's all about layouting. If you have that foundation knowledge of layouting, that would be helpful for creating a beautiful UI. Okay. Uh, so to begin with, let me just this. Yeah, so this is a Flutter project that we created. In order to create a Flutter project, all you have to do is open your Visual Studio, and then if you do Command P, you can create new project. So it has to be Flutter new project, through which you can create a Flutter project. Now, to understand the folder structure, let me just zoom in a bit. Yeah. So you can see a lot of folders have been created when you generate Flutter project. So I think last time I did talk about pubspec.yml. So pubspec.yml is like a file where, it contains all the dependencies that you need to add for a Flutter project. So you can see here, there is this dependency. As of now, only Flutter has added as a dependency. You can add more dependencies here. So when I say dependencies, these are the places where you can add libraries that are pre-existing, and you would not reinvent everything that you do in a Flutter application. You would rather use a library which is doing the thing, and you just use those library. That's about PubSpec. So every time you change anything in PubSpec, say for example, I add a new package, what you have to do is you have to open a terminal and you have to do Flutter pub get. One good thing about Visual Studio is if I just make any changes in the PubSpec and just save it, this Flutter pub get command is run automatically. So you have this button which will do get packages. So this also executes Flutter pub get. Or even if you save the file, the pubspec YAML in Visual Studio downloads all the packages that are needed. Apart from pubspec YAML, the one thing that you have to, the first thing that you have to see is libfile. In fact, what code you write it in libfile. So all the Dart, uh, sorry, yeah, all the Dart code will be written in lib, not in any other directory. So lib is the go-to file for any Flutter project. So project is a project that would be used to build, say, Windows application. So you're building an application that would be deployed in all the platforms, like Android. You want an Android build, iOS build. You want a Mac desktop build. As in you are building a website, so web build, or say you're building for Windows or Linux. So all these are native codes. So ideally, you would not start touching these things only when you are going to a complex application. Only then you touch it. But on a if you're just getting started with Flutter development, you would not touch these files. So you don't have to worry about these files. The only file that you will be touching is lib. But it's important to know that this Android contains all the Android related files. iOS contains iOS specific, Mac, Windows, and stuff like that. Now, if you don't want your Flutter project to support, say, I'm not building any web app or desktop, I am only concentrating on Android and iOS, then what you can do is you can delete all these folders, which will not do anything. So you can delete those folders where you are not supporting. So if I am not supporting web, I'll just delete the whole folder. Okay. Now, let's go to lib. One thing that you have to understand is Flutter, the starting point of Flutter is main file. Huh? So whenever you open a Flutter project, the first thing that you have to look for is main.dat. That is where all the initial things starts with. Huh? So if you look at main file, you have a main function. So this main function is the one that get executed when I run this application. So in the main file, the first function that you're calling is something called as run app. What is this run app? Run app is a function which takes widget. I'll explain you what is a widget later. But what run app takes is it takes a widget. What the role of run app is to take that widget and bind it with Flutter engine. The question is, what is Flutter engine? So Flutter engine is basically the heart of Flutter application. So Flutter engine is responsible to render the UI that you can see here. Okay, so it's important for you to have a run app and then pass the widget to it. If I don't pass this, okay, what happens is this will not become a Flutter application, rather it will become a Dart application. As in so as I previously mentioned, Flutter apps are built using Dart programming language. So to again reiterate, Flutter is not a programming language. Flutter is a framework, but the Flutter framework uses Dart for its programming. And it's important for you guys to have this run app function. Run app function takes a widget. Now, going to what is widget? Widget is the building block of UI. So if you take a Flutter application, everything is treated as a widget. Okay. The screen that you have is treated as a widget. This whole screen, the text widget, anything that you display is a widget. So everything in Flutter is widget. So it's important for you guys to understand what is a widget when you start building and what kind of widgets to be used. Now, to begin with, how many types of widgets are present in that? Ideally, there are two main widget types, which is stateless and stateful. So let me go back to this. Yeah. I will take an example of Instagram and I'll explain you what is stateless and stateful widget. Okay. So just make a note. Let me drop it down. Sorry. Yeah. Let me delete on this. So as I mentioned, there are two types of widget. One is stateful and another one is stateless. Uh, these are the two main widgets that a beginner would use. In fact, I myself use a stateful and stateless widget very often, but there are other kinds of widgets like proxy widgets, repaint object widgets. Those are a complex topic that we will discuss later. But for now, for the simplicity, we keep there are two types of widgets, stateful and stateless. Okay. When do we use these widgets? So stateless widgets are used for those UI components which does not change, and stateful widgets are used for those UI elements that would change. Now, what does that mean? Let's take an example of Instagram. Just a second. Yeah. So here, if you take a home page of Instagram, here you can see there is a logo called Instagram or a text called Instagram. This this UI element does not change, as in it would not change the name from Instagram to something else, right? So this remains constant in an application. So in that case, we use stateless, as in there is no state associated for that widget. Okay. For example, this icon, which is a camera icon, that camera icon also does not change. So you would use a stateless widget. Now, where will you use stateful widget? Take an example of this. You have a profile and you have a circle around them, like a gradient, a purple gradient that is there around the profile. Now, when you click on this particular icon, it opens up a status, and once the status is viewed, this border changes from this gradient to gray color. Okay, so there is a state change in it, as in it is moving from a gradient purple background, a purple radius, to a gray radius. That means that the state of that widget is changing. Whenever there is a state change, then you use something called as stateful. Okay, stateless is used for those widgets that are statics or those widgets that would not change, and stateful widgets are used when there is a state change. Now let's go into more, understanding more on where we use stateful and stateless. Okay, let's take an example of this post. So here, this like button. So the moment I click on this like button, the like button changes from a transparent fill to a red color filled icon. So here you can see that there is a state change, as in when you click on it, it moves from one UI element to another UI element. So in that case, you have to use stateful widget. Now comment. So this is just an icon. This will not, when I click on something, when I click on this icon, this will not change its state. In that case, you use a stateless widget. Share option is also stateless. These scrollers is something, yeah, here it's important. So this whole scroller is a stateless widget, but individual indicator is a, sorry, the whole scroller is a stateless widget and the individual indicator is a stateful widget, because when I move this particular post, the state from here, it changes to here, as in this dot indicator moves from gray color to a blue color. Okay, and here also bookmark is also a stateful widget. So just to summarize, there are two main widgets in Flutter. One is stateful widget and stateless widget. Stateful widgets are used when there is a change of text or change of UI element. Stateless widgets are used when you have a static data. Now let's go into application and see how it is done. So let me take this example. So the app itself, so if you look at run app takes a widget. The app itself is a widget. So if you see main app, what is this main app? When you control click on it, it comes here. So main app is a class which will extend a widget. So when I say extend, so this is a concept of inheritance. For those who have not come across object-oriented programming, a simple way to explain this inheritance concept is you define a class. Class is nothing but a blueprint. So class can have so many fields, so many types. For now, what you can think is class a defined purpose. Okay, so you have class main app that extends stateless widget. What is happening is this main app now extends all the properties or the feature of a stateless widget into main app. So it means that main app is inheriting all the property of stateless widget. So the moment I make class a stateless widget to extend a stateless widget, this widget or this class also becomes a stateless widget. Okay? So that's, let me not go in depth of explaining object-oriented programming and all. But yeah, so if I have to make a particular widget to be a stateless widget, you extend it with stateless widget. Or else if I want a stateful widget, you do stateful widget. But for now, we'll keep it stateless widget. Now, one of the questions that you can ask is, why is the app stateless widget? Okay. It's a very interesting concept here. So the app itself will not change. The contents in the app will change. Just a second. Yeah, so I was telling the main app itself is a stateless widget because the content inside them will change, but not the app itself. So that's why we treat it as stateless widget. Now, coming inside a stateless widget, this main app contains something called as material app. So when you create an application, you have to wrap it with material app or something called as Cupertino app. Material app is used for Android application and Cupertino app is used for iOS application. But that doesn't mean that you have to write both of it. Either of it is fine. If you're building an application that would run on both iOS and Android, you can still choose to keep Material app. But if you're dedicating your app for iOS, okay, then you have to use Cupertino app. If you're dedicated it for Android, you have to use and Material app. Okay. For now, we'll keep it as Material app. Okay. Material app. So what does this Material app do? So Material app it's again a widget. So if I control click on it, it goes inside a class. Now, why am I able to control click? So in your Windows, I don't know what is it should be control click, and in Mac it is command click. Okay. So when I click on command click on this, it goes inside its implementation, how it is implementation is done. Now, if you see the app itself, Material app itself is a widget. Again, it is a stateful widget. Now, so the good thing about Flutter is that it is completely open source. When I say open source, I can click on a particular thing and I can go inside and see the entire implementation of it. So that is why it is open source. Open source as in it gives us complete flexibility on how the app or the Flutter framework itself is implemented. Okay. So you have Material app, and within Material app, you have something called as home. You pass a parameter. Okay. So for that, we are using scaffold. Now, what is scaffold? Scaffold is basically the first widget that you would put in a screen. I'll be explaining more in about each widget. For now, you keep it as this is when you create a screen, you need to keep scaffold at the top layer. Now there is center and there is a text widget that I've displayed. So here you can see that a hello world text is displayed. Now let's say I'll say hello world, welcome to Flutter. Okay. And I save it. And you can see that the text is now changed. Now let's create, to understand stateless widget and stateful widget, let's create two classes, which is one is a stateless widget and another one is a stateful widget. Let's take a stateless widget. And if you're using Visual Studio and if you have installed Flutter and Dart extension, you can get a shortcuts. Okay. Say if I have to create a stateless widget, I do STLESS. Okay. And then you get a suggestion at the top. And if I just press enter, I'll get a class. Now my widget, but I can change it to say app name. Okay. Change it to app name. And then it extends a stateless widget. And every widget has a build function in it. Okay. Let me not go in depth and confuse you guys. But if I have, all you have to remember is if I have to create a stateless widget, I do STLESS, enter, you get a class that you can edit. For now, I'm keeping it as app name. And now you have created a widget. Now, what should the widget be? It should be a text field. So I write text, and then this is again a widget, and it takes Instagram. So I keep it as Instagram. Now you can see that. So if you see the implementation, you have a stateless widget. Why we have created it as a stateless widget? Because the content of it remains constant. Okay, as in it will not change. A static content UI element I want to display. That's why I've choose stateless widget. So I can take the stateless widget. I'll go to my screen. So scaffold represents a page. Okay, understand that scaffold is a page. So every time you create a new page, the first widget that you have to wrap with is scaffold. Okay? Now inside a scaffold widget, I am putting app name. Okay? And then I will save this file. And you can see the app name came, but somewhere at the top. Now, so if why is this happening? So in order to resolve this, you have to wrap the entire app. Yeah. So there are shortcuts that I would use. I will tell you what these shortcuts are. Say for example, sorry, yeah. So you have this Material app. When I just take or click my cursor there, you get this light bulb. Okay, click on that. You get a bunch of action that you can perform. Now I need to wrap this entire material app inside another widget. So I just click on wrap with widget. Now you get another wrapper. Here I do something called as save area. Okay, I do save area and I save the application. And you can see that Instagram, which was at the top, now came down. What is the safe area? So basically, when you create when you are targeting an application into multiple phones, some applications will have like the camera thing somewhere in the screen, and some has at somewhere here. Or iPhone, if you see, it has something like in the middle they have a section. So in order to make sure that your entire screen is in a safe space, it is not overlapped on those status bars, that is where we use safe area. Okay, so what I did was I wrapped around a safe area for a material app. Ideally you don't have to do it on a material app. You can now I'll remove it. So again, if I want to remove this widget, I click on this and there is an option to remove widget. I remove this. Now when I save it, what happens is the Instagram goes off on the status bar, which is something that I don't want. So I will instead of wrapping it with on the material app, I will wrap it with scaffold. So again, if I want to wrap it with scaffold, rather than clicking my cursor on material app, I'll click it on scaffold. So I click on here and then wrap widget and then I do save it and save it. And for more readability, I'll just add comma so that it will format and give me better formatting. Okay. So we finished creating my app name, which is a static text field. Since it's a static text field, we are using a stateless widget. Okay. Now let's create, say for example, let's create a like button. Okay. So in the like button, as I previously mentioned, it is a stateful widget, as in the state of it is changing. So in order to create stateful widget, same shortcut, you do STF. So for stateless, you do STLESS, that is the shortcut. But for stateful, you do STFUL. Okay. And then you get a suggestion here, Flutter stateful widget. I press enter. It creates the structure of a stateful widget. Okay. Now you can see all the cursors are highlighted on the class name. I can just press back and then I do like button. Okay. Like button. Now I need to use this like button somewhere. Okay. So I come to this app name. Okay. I again wrap it with something. So I will explain what I am wrapping it with later. So I'm wrapping it with a row. Okay. And row would not take a child, it would take children. Okay. So just a second. I think there is a shortcut for. So if I do this, wrap with row. So I just wrap it with row. And next to the row, I'll put like button. But if you see the like button, there is nothing. Currently, it's just a placeholder. Let's do one thing. Let's put an icon. Okay. Let's put an icon of this. Okay. So icon is again a widget. So if you go inside icon widget, it is again a widget, stateless widget. So you see everything in Flutter is a widget. Okay. So here what I've done, I've put an icon. I have a icon class which gives me all the set of icons. So I can have icons dot favorite. I can have icons dot date range. I think date range. Or yeah, for now we'll keep it as icon dot favorite. Okay. Now I save it. And you can see there is an icon that comes. Okay. Now each icon is having properties that I can set. So for example, here I can set color. So you have color and then I can set a color for it. So I do colors dot, say for example, I want it to be gray. So I save it. And then you can see that the color now became gray color. Now, when I click on this, nothing happens, right? I need to make that change. So instead of icon, I wrap it with, so again, if I have to wrap it with, I have to click on this light bulb. But the shortcut for that, so if you just over it, it says that show code icon shortcut is command and dot. Okay, in Windows, it would be, I think, control and dot. But here it is command. I'm using a Mac device, so it is command and dot. So here I'll wrap it with a widget, and here I'll give something called as icon button.
It's 2 o'clock.
And icon button. So if you look at here, I'm getting an error saying that the named parameter child isn't defined. Okay. So I don't know what is defined in icon button. So one way to do it is I do control or command click. I go inside the icon button and I can see that there is no child property that is set, but there is something called as icon property. So what I'll do, I'll delete whole of this. I'll do icon. And what is this icon here? So icon is, again, we have to pass widget to it. So I will put icon in. So now if you see, there is no UI change, okay? But we get a functionality called on press, meaning uh, I am wrapping the icon widget that I want with a icon button so that I can capture the click action on it. Okay. Now, when I click, I mean, I have a capture, I have a option to capture the click action. Huh? But what I have to do, I mean, what I'm trying to achieve here is when someone clicks on this, I am trying to change the color of the icon from gray to, say, blue color. Okay? In order to do that, we define something called state. So state full widget has a state maintained in it. Okay. A Boolean variable I create, which is liked. Okay. I set it to false. And here, uh, here when I come, sorry, is like. So here, as I previously mentioned, I need to set if it is liked, I need to set a colors dot blue. If it is not set, then I have to set a color of gray. Okay. Now you might ask, what is this question mark and what is this, like, in fact, what is the syntax itself? It is something called a ternary operator, which is you write a condition. Okay. If the condition is true, then this line of code is executed, which is between the question mark and this, the line of code is executed. If this condition is false, it will skip this code and it will go to this code. Okay. If I have to explain in terms of code or in terms of the use case that we are doing, I'm saying if it is liked, as in if the button is clicked and liked, show a blue color. If it is not liked, then show a gray color. Okay. By default, I'm setting it to false. So that means that is like button is taking gray color because it is false. Okay? So I'll just restart the application and show that nothing has changed in the UI. All we are trying to do here is create a stateful widget which has a state maintained. Now we need to update that state. And in order to update that state, when do I update this state? Whenever someone clicks on that button. So here I come and I do is liked equals true. And I save. So I made a Boolean variable which is like to true. Now I'll try to click on it. So if I click on it also, nothing happens. Why is this icon not changing to blue? Okay, this is where one of the strong concept of Flutter comes into picture. In this, what you have to understand is the definition of state. Okay, the definition of state and the definition of data. Here, this one is just a data. It is not termed as state because if I do is loading, okay, is like is there, right? It is initially false. Okay, this state is changed. I mean, the data, the value of that particular Boolean variable is changed. but we are not rebuilding this particular widget. That is why this code of line is never executed. It is initially first executed, but after clicking on it, we are not recalling this build function. So a re-render of this icon doesn't happen and you don't get a blue color. Okay. In order to recall this build function, we do something called as setState. Okay. So I just do setState. Ideally, you can put whatever change of state you did inside the setState. But if you choose, I don't want to do that, you can keep it like change the variable and then you can call setState. Now, so it's already changed because I've already clicked on is like, that's why it has become true and it has changed. Let me restart the application so it comes from gray color. So let me restart. So the app is restart. So you have an Instagram button. The reason why I chose Instagram button to have a stateless widget because the content does not change. Now there is a like button. When I click on that like button, now the state has changed and the icon is now changed to blue color. Now when I click on it, it should change it back to gray color, right? So I try to click on it, nothing happens. Why is that? So we have a bug here. Okay, that is when I uh, um, click a liked button, it should change from color to gray color, right? It is not happening. So in IT field, this is termed as bug, as in the feature that you have implemented is not what is I expected. So what I have to do is I have to go back. Why is it not changing? Okay, so initially it is false. Okay, so gray color is printed, but I clicked on the button, so is liked is became true, and then I recalled the set state. So set state will call the build function will update the state. Okay, but the problem here we are doing is we are setting is like to true always. Okay, what this makes is that no matter how many times you click that button, is like is always true, and if it is always true, it is always blue. Okay, for that we need to make it false. Okay? Now I save it and I click on it. Second, the blue color now changed to gray color. Now again I click on it, it is not turning to blue. Why is that? Again, that there is a bug. That is, it is true. Now how to fix it? The logic here is we write if is liked. Okay, if it is liked, then is liked, I should make it false, as in so here this is the case where the button is already liked. Now I am unliking it. Okay, but if the button is not liked, then I have to make it is like to be true. Now I save it and let me rerun the application from the beginning. Okay, I think it should have run. Now when I have a like button, I click on it, it becomes blue. I click on it again, it becomes gray. Okay, so you see the difference. So what I'm trying to do here is that I check if the like button is already liked. If it is liked, I make it false. If it is not liked, I make it liked. And then I call setState, setState's updated, and the state has changed. So this is the difference between using a stateless widget and a stateful widget. Stateful widget is used for those components that changes, and stateless widgets are used for those components that remains static.